The attempt at rapprochement between Lula and Trump is a thing of the past. The expulsion by the United States of a federal police officer adds to a series of disagreements this year that have dissipated the already old, perhaps fake chemistry between the Brazilian and the American.
The turmoil of recent events puts Brazil at the center of an unprecedented diplomatic and geopolitical crisis. The expulsion of federal police officer Marcelo Ivo de Carvalho from the United States combined with the Brazilian president's threat to retaliate. By expelling FBI agents operating on national soil, it creates an atmosphere of tension that goes beyond the limits of traditional diplomacy.
I think that if the Americans overstepped with our officer, we'll respond in kind with theirs in Brazil.
This scenario becomes even more delicate in light of the official statement from the American government, which identified the PCC as the main threat to Brazil's security.
Well, now the news involving the United States, because they have warned Brazil that they intend to intensify an offensive against the criminal factions PCC and Comando Vermelho, including the possibility of tougher actions if there is no cooperation.
The message is clear. Washington considers the fight against Brazilian criminal factions a strategic priority and does not intend to back down in the face of internal political pressure from Brazil. This scenario is becoming the trigger for a military action by the Southern Command against the criminal factions operating in Brazil, confirming that the Trump administration no longer considers the political narratives coming from the current Brazilian president. Welcome to Vida no Quartel. The firm stance of the United States indicates that the Southern Command is ready to move against the criminal groups, regardless of the position of the current Brazilian president. This decision reinforces the idea that continental security is above diplomatic disputes and that organized crime is seen as a transnational threat. The so-called Shield of the Americas gained strength with the support of neighboring countries like Paraguay and Ecuador, who see in U.S. military cooperation an opportunity to contain the advance of factions in their own territories. This regional alignment leaves Brazil in a delicate position, isolated amid a growing coalition. The clashes between Donald Trump and the Brazilian president intensify the perception that the crisis is not only about economic and political issues, but also strategic within the context of protecting America. The harsh rhetoric from both sides fuels instability and creates an environment conducive to drastic measures that could redefine the geopolitics of Latin America. In this context, the warning that he might expel FBI agents from Brazil would no longer be a symbolic act and would come to represent a profound institutional rupture. The measure could compromise international cooperation agreements and weaken Brazil's ability to negotiate other issues with the White House.
All right, folks, let's get you up to speed. Just moments ago this evening, the Itamaraty met with the Charge d'Affaires of the American Embassy, Kimberly Kelly. The Brazilian diplomats asked the American diplomats for explanations.
The Brazilian government's attempt to justify its actions as a defense of national sovereignty loses force in the face of a reality in which factions like the PCC and Comando Vermelho keep expanding. This discrepancy weakens the credibility of the domestic narrative and increases the perception of diplomatic isolation. The United States Southern Command has played an increasingly active role in Latin America, conducting large-scale operations against transnational trafficking and criminal organizations. Dozens of vessels carrying illegal goods have already been taken down in coordinated actions aimed at cutting supply routes and weakening the cartel's logistics. In addition, the Southern Command has intensified its presence in countries neighboring Brazil, such as Paraguay and Ecuador, carrying out joint operations that strengthen regional cooperation and demonstrate the ability to respond quickly to transnational threats. Thus, the Brazilian president's statement about wanting to expel FBI agents from the country, one of the main U.S. federal agencies, sounds like a real test of patience for the Trump administration. Given recent history, the United States does not usually hesitate when it comes to military action, and any gesture considered hostile can be interpreted as a direct challenge to its authority in the region. This risky stance by the Brazilian government could further accelerate the advance of U.S. troops, who already have the support of continental allies and have the declared objective of combating the factions operating within the national territory. The Brazilian president has been escalating his rhetoric against Donald Trump, using a confrontational narrative as a strategy to try to boost his popularity both inside and outside the country.
I want something. Have you noticed that President Trump wants to govern the world through Twitter? Fantastic. He acts daily, and each day the world follows his words.
So, it's not impossible that soon we'll see those American aircraft flying by here and dropping missiles too, man. I'm already mentally preparing to see that, since everyone should be concerned. Even President Lula himself said that we have to be open to any scenario, because if we don't protect ourselves, one day someone might invade us.
This stance, however, puts Brazil on a collision course with the world's greatest military and economic power, which can hardly be considered a smart move. By adopting political ideologies that prioritize confrontation instead of cooperation, the president risks undermining trade relations between Brazil and the United States, something that already negatively impacted the national economy last year. Son of Luanda. By directing criticism at the Trump administration, the Brazilian president ends up contradicting himself in relation to what he had previously defended, when he stated that Nicolás Maduro should not be arrested by the United States, arguing that each country should maintain its independence in making its own decisions. Now, in light of Washington's statement that a Brazilian federal officer tried to circumvent the U.S. immigration system, the president's defense of the agent exposes these inconsistencies even further, since, by trying to discredit how U.S. systems work, he directly involves himself in the internal affairs of another country. Leave your opinion here in the comments and join the debate. We would like to thank the members and subscribers of Vida No Quartel, who supported the channel in the last video with direct donations that strengthened our editorial structure. Our special salute in this video goes to Ivanice Marquez, Margaret Martins, and Jose Reginaldo Carvalho, who, among many supporters, contributed to our channel. Here at Vida No Quartel, you stay up to date with everything happening in the military world. Leave a like, subscribe, and watch one of the videos appearing on your screen. Onward, fighters. See you next time.